correct. Bryophytes, they don't have vascular tissue. They are non-vascular plants. They have stomata and cuticle. Seedless vascular plants, they have vascular tissue, but there's no seeds. Gymnosperms have vascular tissue and the seeds, but no flowers. So that's the answer, no flowers. It has vascular tissue and seeds. Angiosperms have flowers. So next group we have is angiosperms. That was the origin of flowers and fruits that introduced new reproductive adaptation. It was a reproductive adaptation because, as I said before, now it can entice animals. Animals can eat the fruit and poop somewhere maybe far away. Maybe there are more nutrients there. And that's how it's going to help it reproduce. It can poop out the seeds after eating the fruit. Also, the insects are going to do the pollination. So angiosperms are flowering plants. So when a flower is fertilized, it turns into a seed. And once these petals fall, animals eat them, or animals eat the fruit, they can, drop the seeds and it can start growing again. So the original flowers and fruits were a reproductive adaptation. It made it more efficient to have, if they had flowers and fruits, they didn't have to rely that much on the wind. They had other group that could work for them. For example, the animals and the insects. So they teamed up with the insects and the plant animals for reproduction. Okay, so next thing we have is the life cycle. All plants, all 4 groups, have a similar life cycle. That is called alternation of generations. This is really, really important. I told you for the last chapter, you don't have to know or memorize the fungus life cycle. For this chapter, I'm going to have you memorize the alternation of generations plant life cycle because this is similar in all of the plants. Once you have this memorized, then we can go in and tweak it maybe for the cone plants, for the fern plants, or the mosses. So we can tweak it a little bit, but overall generalized life cycle is the same. So because this life cycle is the same among the plants, it's the evidence that plants share a common ancestor. And this life cycle is called alternation of generations because it's alternating between diploid and haploid. It says 2N, that's diploid. Here it says 1N, that's haploid. So it's alternating between 2 stages, and that's why it's called alternation of generations. That's when a multicellular diploid stage alternates with a haploid stage. So it's alternating. So this part, green part up here, is showing you the diploid stage. Here you have the zygote, that's diploid. Here you have something that's called sporophyte. I'll tell you why it's called sporophyte in a little bit. That's also diploid. Here in brown, you have the haploid stage. You have the spores that are haploid. You have gametophyte that's haploid, and the gametes that are haploid. This is 1N. So this is alternation of generations that's happening. So let's go over this. You have a zygote. You already remember, if you remember, mitosis and meiosis. Another thing is, it says mitosis here, meiosis here. Now I don't have to go back and explain what mitosis is or meiosis is because you already know, we already went over this chapter. So a zygote is when, there's a fertilization of a sperm and egg, makes a zygote, combines the chromosome number, that's 2N, diploid. Then it starts to divide and divide through mitosis. And once it divides, it's going to start growing like this. And this is called a sporophyte. The reason it's called a sporophyte is because it makes spores. So it's also diploid because the zygote was diploid. And then it's going to go through meiosis. If you remember, for us, it was opposite. It went through mitosis. Meiosis was referring to the sex cells, sperm and egg coming together, but here it's meiosis and it's turning from diploid to haploid, so it's opposite. And it's gonna go through meiosis, it's gonna give you these spores. When that happens, this meiosis is going to halve the number of chromosomes, and it's going to make it haploid. So you have that haploid, and that goes through mitosis. Spores go through mitosis. So they just drop somewhere on the soil, and they start to grow. When it starts to grow, we call it a gametophyte, because this is the stage that's going to make gametes. This is also 1N because spores were 1N. So haploid spores fall and turn into gametophyte. It grows. Then it goes through mitosis again, and it's going to make gametes. Gametes are going to be egg and sperm. Once these gametes combine through fertilization, it's going to give you a zygote that's diploid again. So that's what you get. So sperm and egg, they'll find each other, and this whole thing just repeats. So that's alternation of generations. I really want you to commit this to your memory. I want you to take a blank sheet of paper and keep drawing this until you have this memorized. On the exam, I can give you this life cycle. I can ask you to label, either in between, or I can ask you to label the stages. So you really have to know this cycle for the plants, alternation of generation. So let's go ahead and do some vocabulary. So sporo, or sporo means spore, phyte means plant. So sporophyte is the plant stage that produces spores. And then gametophyte, the plant stage that produces gametes. So that's the vocabulary, that's where the names are coming from. So I want to see if you guys were paying attention. So let's go ahead and draw this. So first thing, you have a zygote. Can you remember if it's haploid or diploid?
Diploid.
Diploid, so that's
Wait.
2N. What type of cell division it goes through?
Mitosis.
Mitosis. And it's gonna, now try to draw the leaves here. Turn into a sporophyte. It's a sporophyte. Can you remember if a sporophyte is diploid or haploid?
Diploid.
Diploid. Then it goes through another cell division or another process. What is it called?
Meiosis.
Meiosis. And it's gonna make some spores. I just did here some spores. And these spores are going to fall down and they're gonna start growing. And that's a gametophyte. Gametophyte, is this diploid or haploid? Also the spore.
Haploid.
Haploid. So this is 1N. I'm gonna just try to draw some pollen maybe for the gymnosperms. Then this gametophyte goes through mitosis again. Oh, I forgot to mention which stage is here. Meiosis or mitosis?
Mitosis.
Mitosis.
And it's going to make gametes. Now those gametes can be egg and sperm. Let's see, sperm. Once these gametes find each other, maybe one plant makes eggs, other plant makes a sperm. Once they find each other, they're going to fuse together and go through fertilization. And that's going to give you a zygote. And this whole cycle is going to repeat. So this is called alternation of generations. So make sure you guys memorize this, because if you don't memorize this, then it's going to be difficult for you to memorize the plant cycles for different plants. So next slide is showing us that. Actually, this is still saying the sex cells fuse at fertilization, forming a diploid, and this whole cycle repeats again. So this is a generalized plant life cycle. This is what I want you to memorize. Now I said we can go in and tweak it. So here, this is showing you what you would replace it with. So the one we just went over were the fern plants here. This is a life cycle for fern plants. For bryophytes, you can, this is what it's going to look like for a sporophyte. And for the seedless vascular plants or fern plants, this is what it looks like. Here for the gametophyte, bryophytes, they produce a gametophyte that looks like this. Seedless vascular plants produce a gametophyte that looks, this heart-shaped leaf. So that's the one we just went over. So we're gonna go and tweak this life cycle, the alternation of generations for bryophytes, seedless vascular plants, and that's it. We're now gonna do gymnosperm and angiosperm life cycle. So those are the one we will be substituting for. So I'm gonna go in detail for bryophytes, and then I'll go in detail for the seedless vascular plants. So that's substituting images for the alternation of generations. And this is the reason I said, take a blank sheet of paper and just keep writing this. Once you do that, then you can just replace it for the bryophytes. Actually, there are only 2 that you guys have to know for this class. So which of following are haploid?